I'd been yearning for a brief escape from the monotony of my flat surroundings. Colorado's rugged landscapes seemed like the perfect antidote. But unfamiliar with the smaller towns, I scoured Airbnb for an affordable retreat. Options were scarce, but I found one that seemed promising. With the reservation confirmed, I hit the road the following week, embarking on a 10-hour journey through the countryside. Arriving in the town where my Airbnb awaited, I was greeted by a disconcerting sight. The sparse rows of houses bordered a desolate road, shrouded in darkness, casting an eerie ambiance reminiscent of a ghost town. Despite my initial discomfort, I managed to locate the Airbnb nestled among 4 other modest homes. Entering the cozy 500-square-foot abode, I couldn't help but appreciate its quaint charm. After settling into the bedroom, I retreated to the kitchen for a moment of respite. As I stood by the counter, the distant rumble of a car drew my attention to the window. A pair of headlights illuminated the cul-de-sac, yet no one emerged from the vehicle. Opting not to pry, I returned to my affairs, briefly updating my loved ones on my safe arrival. 15 minutes later, I retired to bed, unfazed by the distant sounds of footsteps outside. Drifting into slumber, I awoke to an unsettling sense of foreboding. Amidst the silence, I discerned a pair of eyes peering through the window, sending shivers down my spine. Frozen in fear, I watched as the figure retreated, its movements barely audible. Roused into action, I hastily dressed as a sudden commotion erupted outside the bedroom door. Heavy footsteps reverberated through the hallway before fading into the night. Gripped by uncertainty, I remained still, listening intently as the intruder's retreat culminated in the distant hum of a departing car. With trepidation, I ventured into the hallway, finding the front door ajar, the night enveloping the scene in an eerie stillness. Despite reporting the incident to the local authorities, unanswered questions lingered. Who were they? What did they seek? Unable to shake the lingering unease, I made the decision to cut short my stay, leaving the mysteries of that night behind.
Do you feel that tingling? That's the fear running through your veins. If you love the thrill and don't want to miss any of our scary stories, hit the subscribe button.
Arriving at my last pit stop before reaching my final destination, exhaustion weighed heavily upon me. The Airbnb I had booked for the night was a nondescript house off the beaten path, chosen solely for its convenience along my route. I hadn't bothered to investigate much. All I sought was a bed to rest my weary bones for the night. Upon entering, a foul odor greeted me, permeating the air with its unpleasantness. It wasn't alarming, but certainly far from pleasant. Perhaps the scent of decay or mold lurking in the shadows. A cursory glance around revealed that the smell emanated strongest from the bedroom, prompting me to opt for the safer confines of the living room for the night. As I settled onto the couch, an unsettling thud echoed through the walls, disrupting the silence of the night. Straining to discern its origin, I cautiously explored the house, checking each room for signs of trouble. Finding nothing amiss, I reassured myself that it was a minor inconvenience, unrelated to my brief stay. Moments later, another thud pierced the silence, stirring a sense of unease within me. Despite my efforts to rationalize the disturbance, a lingering sense of discomfort persisted. Resigned to my fate, I resigned myself to the couch, hoping to find solace in sleep. However, my slumber was abruptly shattered by a chilling sensation. A man looming over me, his presence suffocating. Before I could react, he bolted from the room, disappearing into the night. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, only to stumble upon a chilling discovery: a folding ladder leading to an attic concealed in the hallway shadows. In a panic, I summoned help, realizing the intruder had been lurking above, concealed in the attic's depths. Though his intentions remained unclear, the mere thought sent shivers down my spine. If not for my fortuitous awakening, the night could have ended in unspeakable tragedy. At the time of writing this happened only a few weeks ago. I had driven out to an Airbnb vacation cabin in a woodsy area. I had planned a backpacking trip with a few friends, and I was meant to stay there only 2 nights before heading out for the rest of the week. When I pulled in and saw the place, I was satisfied. It was very isolated. It was very much just a plain cabin, which I loved. I parked around the side of the place and got my gear out of the truck, bringing it inside. The inside is what you'd expect, small and not the nicest, but good for what I paid for. That night, I pretty much got right in bed though, falling asleep and getting up early the next morning. My goal for this day was to scout out the first portion of the trail that my friends would meet me on the following day. Really, I just needed to make sure it was open and not too muddy from last week's rainfall. If it was, then we'd have to find a new trail. I made a cup of coffee and chilled until mid-afternoon, then went out and walked down to the main road, walking along it for a half-mile to the trailhead. It looked clear and dry, so I didn't bother hiking down more than a quarter mile or so before heading back. In total, I'd only been gone for an hour. But when I got onto the path leading to the Airbnb, I saw in the distance that a truck was now parked right out front. I quickened my pace, unsure what was going on. When I got up to the cabin, I went right up to the window of the truck, but nobody was inside. I then looked around in all directions, not seeing anyone at all. Nobody in the distance, nobody at the front door. Where else could they even be? I cautiously walked up to the front door, noticing it was still locked. Heading inside, it was clear that nobody had entered, which was my worst fear. After double-checking all the rooms, I opened the Airbnb app and contacted the host, asking if he or someone else was here. As I waited for a response, I checked the windows but still saw nothing. What made this so unnerving was that I couldn't see where anyone could even go from here. It was just forest around, with this one cabin in the middle. As I continued to wait for a response, hours passed. I kept looking for anyone to come back to their truck, but with the sun setting, it seemed more unlikely. Then at just about 8 p.m., I got a text back. No one else should be here. I'd be lying if I said I didn't already expect that answer, but I was just hoping that somehow it wasn't. After some thinking, I just couldn't get myself to feel safe enough to stay the night. I went around the cabin and started packing my things. But then the sudden sound of footsteps came from the front. I stopped and listened as they made their way onto the porch and up to the door. Moments passed and no knock came. I must have stood there staring at the doorstep, but he was facing away from the door, looking out by the truck. An eerie feeling came over me looking at this man not moving at all and just staring out into the distance, feeling that he may not be the only one out there. I took a few steps back, trying to quietly go into the other room to call 911. But on my third step, one of the floorboards made an extremely loud creak. Right after, I heard the man shuffle around outside, followed by seeing the doorknob shake violently as he tried to open it. I ran and locked myself in the bedroom, dialing 911 as the man outside continued to shake the door and bang on it, before suddenly running off the porch. A second later, I heard the truck driving away. Police made it to the cabin relatively quickly, but it didn't end up being that helpful. I left the cabin that night to stay in a hotel instead, being that the man wasn't caught and was still out there somewhere. I really can't even try to guess what he was doing, but the thing that really horrifies me is thinking about where the man was that whole time. Was he just standing out in the woods or hiding somewhere outside the house? After that experience, though, I probably won't be staying in another far-out cabin anytime. If you want to see more horror stories, watch my next video.